Should be the last one. Find the Hellbender. ESDSE. Back. Okay, actual combat. We're fighting Lady Hellbender this time. Actually, we're trying to escape and get to the vault. For this particular part of the decision tree, I chose to not flirt with her. Actually, I told Drax not to flirt with her. But again, you'll see scenes like this. You know, these little very light spectacle. There are several water slide sequences. I guess it's not a binary domain thing, is it? I guess it's a thing that a lot of these AAA games do, because it's sort of an easy way to look. It's an easy way to give people some action before the combat shows up. Again, we're going down another narrow corridor here. Not a lot of exploration here, but we will be able to get into a bunch of fights.
Act now, or we will all perish.
We need to get off this thing.
That thing's coming in hot. Well, stop wasting time.
Everyone look for a way out.
We need to get off this thing.
It ain't slowing down.
Peter, tell me you've got an idea here.
I don't. There we go. Yeah, that was the part I forgot about. So these red things are dangerous.
All right, go. Let's try and get out of here in one piece.
So these will be a bit more important later, but for now we're going to set up the final bit of combat. You get to see everyone fight for this part, but I do want to make something clear during this part. We're going to lower the difficulty for just this one bit of the combat, because I want to show you how the team combat works during this part.
We're gonna clean out that vault we saw on the way.
You can't be serious. Even
X.
Peter's not that suicidal.
We'll blame Rocket.
What do you want to get?
We're going to make a different. We're going to choose a different option this time.
Mess, you can get us out.
Piece of cake. We just got to get back to all the elevators.
Do not get us killed with your recklessness.
More lore crap.
You're lecturing me? You went on an intergalactic killing spree.
It's not too late to add one more to that spree.
Okay, so again, the banter's good. I might have already mentioned this. I think that this game's dialogue might be the best dialogue I've heard in a video game. Probably in nearly a decade. Like, I mean, I haven't played games like, I haven't played things like Disco Elysium, but there have been games that I thought had some good dialogue. I was a big fan of the first two Arkham games. Borderlands 2 I thought was pretty good.
I'm telling you, still come out on top.
Yeah, Yakuza. What was it? Enter the Dragon had a very good story in it. It might be similar to this game. But of course, that game was a turn-based.
Something to look forward
That was a
to.
turn-based role-playing game. And this is a real-time action game. Although, to be honest, it's more of a visual novel with some real-time exploration and not much else, if I'm being honest. But, again, this is where the conversation comes up. Most of the game is this. Gotta mash on the A button. You can fail those if you don't do the QTE thing the game wants you to do. Yep, I will take that. Yoink. So that's the new costume for Drax, his MCU costume. The story has nothing to do with the MCU, by the way. It's literally its own standalone thing, which I think is the best option, because while Avengers turned out to be kind of a mess, the infamous Avengers game that Square Enix made, that kind of explains where this game, this game had everything going against it. Like, this game had very little hype. It was the second entry in an IP acquisition that was apparently already off on the wrong foot, because the very first game was supposed to be the can't miss game, the endless MMO online only thing. Whatever Avengers was supposed to be, turned out to just make a mess right away, and people hated it. We'll talk about that in a second, because we're getting ready to go into some combat now. Okay. Let me adjust that. I have this on easy mode, but I want to stop things in their tracks. Give me a second. Settings, accessibility. Where's the Guardians mode? It might be under difficulty, so let's set that up. So under difficulty, we have an option to do Guardians mode slow down. One is a complete pause. So the game is completely paused in this mode, because I want you to see what my options are. While we're holding down the left bumper, we can choose individual enemies with the right stick. Let's go to the middle of the crowd. So, for instance, I would want to start with Rocket throwing a grenade at a couple of guys who are close to each other. So let's press the A button, and then we'll choose the A button for Rocket to throw a grenade. And that, I think, might have killed them all. So there you go. So right off the bat, you can see why this Guardian mode is so useful, that you're choosing allies. No one else is around here. So I'll tell you what. Let's press the X button to choose Groot. We can tell Groot to entangle the enemies that are up there. And I think they're both entangled, I can't tell. Also, what can we do? We can have Drax. Actually, let's have Drax punch one of these guys. This guy's pretty strong, so press the B button for Drax, and he will punch a guy really hard.
I shall break their bones!
Yeah, he's gonna do the giant swing on him like Dave Bautista would. Let's see, let's get Gamora in there to apply some damage to one of these guys. Press Y, and she will attack one of those people. She just teleports around the screen, so don't worry about where the enemies are. They will teleport to them. Okay, so everyone is getting their health back. So I'll walk up to this guy and punch him in the face with my melee attack. They will fight for you, but some enemies that are really strong, like the elites, I guess you could call them, what they will do is they will counter any melee attacks you try to do against them. So you don't want to walk up to them and try to punch them. This guy, let's freeze him. I'm gonna use the right bumper to choose my freeze gun. Press left on the D-pad. So I press left on the D-pad to make sure my ice gun is chosen. It's always chosen. It's my only elemental weapon right now. Look on the iron sights and press LB. You hold the button down, the enemy gets frozen, and while they're frozen in place, you do a little bit more damage than you would otherwise. That is extremely helpful. You're gonna need to freeze enemies a bit later. Oh, you can also press the Y button here to tell Drax to pick things up, and he'll throw them at enemies automatically, which is extremely handy. And a couple of enemies down there. Let's get Groot. Let's get Rocket to get the party started by pressing the A button and throw a grenade at the Groot. Yeah, there are a couple of other things around here. Whoops. LB. So the game is paused.
Unleash me onto these fools!
An argument could be made you should take out the snipers on the roof. So get Drax to press the Y button, and he will pick up that rock and throw it at someone in particular. Let's see, hold LB. Let's have Gamora attack the snipers on the roof.
Gamora, cut him down!
You don't stand
And
a
over
chance.
there, B button, have Drax attack the other sniper. So you see what happens, right? It doesn't matter where they are in the arena. If you tell them to target a specific enemy, they'll teleport right to that enemy and perform that attack on them. So again, looks like everyone else is cooling down. Drax is on the right side of the diamond. He's in the middle of an attack. Gamora is on the top of the diamond. She's in the middle of a cooldown. Rocket is on the bottom of the diamond. He's at home base, I guess you could say. He is on a cooldown, and Groot is on the left side of the diamond. He's on third base. He is ready to go. We're not going to use him yet, though. Okay, so that's basically how team combat works. We might not have much to show at this point. Let me see, is there anything over here I can look at? No, can't interact with that. This is the way we're supposed to go, right? Yeah, I guess we're supposed to go this way.
Is this your guys' first fight?
There's someone else around here? Is there more combat over here? There might be someone over there.
What's next, Peter?
Okay, so you saw the momentum break over there. Let me show you that, where's the options? Let's see. We're supposed to go to the tutorial, right? There we go. A couple of other things that I haven't had to explain because it's really not that important, except on higher difficulty levels or in boss fights. Certain enemies have a stagger bar below their health bar. You saw during that fight there was a red meter above each enemy's head. Below that there might be a white bar against some enemies. That's their stagger bar. Specific attacks and abilities used against them will fill it. Once the bar is filled, the enemy stagger, the bar will start blinking, and a shimmering effect will be visible on the enemy. In this state, they take more damage. They also become vulnerable to abilities they previously resisted. So that's helpful against elite enemies and mobs. But we don't do much fighting in this game. So I'm just kind of going over the basics so you'll know in a harder fight, this bar might be important later. Against the boss, it will be very important. There's a squid boss coming up a bit later. Combat momentum. Momentum represents how efficient you are at combat. The more varied and effective your moves are, the more the momentum gauge goes up. So I guess it's like Tony Hawk. If you do more tricks, you gain more momentum in this case, instead of points. On the other hand, staying inactive for too long causes the momentum gauge to decrease and eventually reset. Repeating the same actions over and over again decreases how much they contribute to your momentum score, so keep your moves varied. So in my case, if I'm shooting guns, throw in an ice bullet sometimes, and punch enemies with melee attacks eventually. Do some dashes, I guess. I guess the game wants us to not just spam the same attacks over and over again. But again, in most combat, it's not that meaningful because there is so little combat in this game. Unless you're going for like a perfect run or a speed run, I can't imagine why this is terribly important. Early on, the first 6 or 7 hours of the game, it's not that important. Maybe later in the game it is, I don't know. But this game has so little combat early on that you're not going to need to know any of this until right around now. Because at Chapter 4, which is where I am right now, 4 or 5 hours into the game, that's when the game finally starts giving you more difficult combat. So this part right here is basically a gauntlet we're going to have to go through for the next half hour. I'm not going to show you the entire gauntlet, but I wanted to show you how a string of combat sequences works in a game like this where there's very little combat for most of the game. Most of what you saw in this video up to this point is walking and talking and exploration with very minor traversal puzzles. Now we're getting into an actual gauntlet. Let's see, we have a huddle right here. The huddle is your most powerful tool in combat, and if a difficult situation arises, call one by pressing left. Actually, was that momentum ever explained? Yeah, let's finish this part up. The higher momentum score, the more likely you are to trigger call to actions from your companions during combat, and the more bonus experience you receive at the end. So there you go, don't lose your groove. But again, there's so few combat situations in this game that there's really no place to grind up. This isn't a game where you grind up for experience to get better and unlock more abilities. It's a game where you're on rails and you just kind of do what the game tells you to do. And if you find all the hidden loot or whatever, then you'll be stronger than you would be otherwise. But if anything, you're going to be overpowered if you do what I do, which is scrubbing all the walls for stuff. But if you just play the game casually, everything will fall in your lap. You don't have to worry about that. And I'm playing on the easy difficulty level now, but normally I play on a harder difficulty level, but I'm trying to explain the basics of combat, so I lower the difficulty level for that purpose. The huddle is your most powerful tool in combat. Like, where's the rest of that? That's not explained. Call one by pressing LB and RB simultaneously while your huddle gauge is full. When you call a huddle, fallen guardians will be revived and will all join you. Because if an ally falls in combat, you have to walk over to them and heal them. That takes about 3 or 4 seconds, apparently. But if you call a huddle, they'll all be revived, so that's good. And remember, your allies are being controlled by artificial intelligence. So, unfortunately, you don't really have a lot of control over whether or not they die unless you stand around and let them do all the fighting. They will apparently take some damage. But if you participate in the fight somewhat often, your allies won't really die. Unless you get careless and let them get attacked by much stronger enemies, which usually doesn't happen. Because again, there's so little combat in this game, you're really in a situation where an ally is going to be in trouble. Now, when a guardian is incapacitated, a person press Y or hold Y to get them back into a fight. There you go. Let's see. Back to the huddle. Pay attention to their mood as they speak. If they sound defeated, you'll need to choose a response that motivates them. If they sound too confident or argumentative, you need to choose a response that refocuses them. There are only 2 options in a huddle. I guess we'll probably unlock one eventually, so I'll show you that. But basically, if you call the huddle, you'll listen to what they say, and if they sound overconfident, you refocus them. If they're argumentative, you can refocus them. If they sound defeated, you can motivate them. But there are only 2 options. Yes, basically A or B. And if it works, keywords appear on screen to reflect their current mood. Use them as a guide as you know how to answer. Again, it's not that big of a deal. If you make the right choice, both you and the Guardians will benefit from a damage boost for a certain duration. If you make the wrong choice, only I will benefit from the boost. So the huddle gauge is always good, but if you want to give your allies a bit more, a bit more damage, something like that, you want to make them stronger temporarily, that's what the huddle's for. Huddle gauge fills based on the Guardian abilities you use in combat. The more you use them, the faster it fills. There's an argument to be made that you should just spam them over and over again, which is what I was kind of doing. I was basically holding down the LB button, choosing a particular ally, and then telling them to attack either a group of enemies or one particular enemy that I wanted out of the way more quickly. Let's see, Star-Lord has element shots. These are equipped. We only have one element at this point in the game. We'll get more later. Right now, 5-6 hours into the game, we got 1 out of the 4. So we don't have to worry about it. They're fired with the right bumper. Each element shot consumes elemental charges, and they're visible in the little chyron to the left of the elemental bar. These recharges generate after a few ticks without firing. So if you lay off the elemental bullets, they'll eventually recharge. You can use regular bullets instead, while the elemental charge is regenerating. Elemental shots have a wide variety of uses, like freezing enemies. They're gelatin enemies you'll see later on. If you freeze them, you can blow them up more quickly. So it's going to be you will want to use your elemental gun in a lot of situations, because freezing enemies is almost always good, and they die more quickly if you kill them while they're frozen. If you shoot them while they're frozen, they're more fragile. So in combat, that is actually a useful ability you will want to exploit. Melee attacks. Certain enemies are vulnerable to punches and kicks, while others are seemingly immune. I mentioned this earlier. There are elite enemies inside of mobs that if you try to melee them, they will catch your punch and knock you to the ground, so don't. But it's usually not a problem. You defeat enemies with melee attacks, it will drop more health pickups, but you're putting yourself at risk. But it's like in Doom 2016. You punch an enemy, it's more likely to drop a health item. Call to action. There are short windows of opportunity that may appear during combat against certain enemies. When conditions are met, the Y button prompt will appear briefly above the enemy. Pressing Y before the button prompt disappears inspires a Guardian to perform a special attack that permanently hinders the enemy, making them easier to defeat. Against bosses, it's basically a quick time event. There will be a moment when you have to press the Y button, and one of your allies will perform an action that incapacitates them or does a significant amount of damage. Apparently, it's the only way to defeat the squid boss we're going to see later on in this chapter, or the squid boss you face later in this chapter. It's the first big epic fight you have in this game, and it's 6-7 hours in. You can dash at any time by pressing B, use the jet boost to avoid taking damage, and to quickly move across the battlefield. There's a perfect dodge perk. You're not going to need it yet. Maybe later it'll help, but you're not going to need it yet. Health markers are small diamond-shaped icons at the top of an enemy's health display. They represent additional health, like in a game like Final Fight. If their health bar has a diamond on top of it, it means that health bar has to be expended before that pip disappears. Enemies cannot be defeated until the markers are destroyed and the final health bar is empty. So if this enemy has one diamond above it, you have to empty the bar and that diamond disappears, and then the final health bar has to be depleted to defeat the enemy. Ability points. So they're used to unlock new abilities for Star-Lord and the Guardians. Each ability comes at a specific cost. You gain new ability points by filling your XP gauge, as you saw at the end of that fight earlier. XP points are awarded at the end of every combat based on your performance. The better you perform, the faster your XP gauge fills, allowing you to unlock combat abilities. That's always good. Perks are upgrades solely dedicated to Star-Lord. We can only do these at workbenches. They're on the ship. When we were talking to Rocket Raccoon earlier, he was working at the workbench. If we're on the ship and we're at the workbench, you can actually upgrade yourself with things like, more health. Or, what is this? There's a cooldown I want to show you a bit later, where you see the parentheses around the reticle, and I'll show you that in a second. You can reduce the charge time or the cooldown on the guns. Not necessary. Not that I've noticed. I don't think it's ever necessary. This is the perk I was telling you about. When you shoot a gun, there are 2 parentheses on either side. They fill up and they turn red. The gun is overheated. Then during the cooldown period, you press the meter, and And if you press the meter when it's inside the green reload zone, you'll reload the guns more quickly and do a special attack. That's what this is explaining. Heat gauge reaches its maximum level. A small green zone appears inside of it. Press the right trigger when the gauge is inside the zone. It cancels the cooldown, allowing you to resume shooting immediately. You also fire 2 extra bullets when you do so, dealing additional damage. So I'll show you that. SGCGS. Guardians.